social protection by all and for all, it's a bit of phrases used during this campaign. So yeah, already said, WSM is also directly embedded in the labor movement. So I'll go a little bit back to basics, if I may call it like that. And yeah, so this is a bit what we do. Don't worry, you can find the information on our website. Okay, so looking at social protection, and then this is, yeah, well, a position, a vision, which is taken actually from all the activity and all the work being done by partner organizations around the world. And the major part of my presentation is just like 3 examples of how I think, why, well, it was useful to say something in this debate on commons, even though I haven't studied it nearly as intensive as all of you have. And then my chef also asked, what are you going to tell there? This commons debate is nothing for us. We said, yes it is, because that's exactly what our partners in the South are doing. And it's also still what the ancient labor movement in Belgium is doing. So, yeah, a bit back to this. Rights-based, universal, comprehensive. So we agree with, let's say, almost everything which has been said on social protection force not being sufficient, having to go beyond the minimalistic basic rights approaches. So, okay, it has to be, and it is, and in the facts, but we strongly believe it has to be a multi-stakeholder thing. And we strongly believe that social movements should have and continue to have a strong role in it, in several ways. And it can only be sustainable if it's financed by multiple solidarity-based sources. Multiple meaning we don't only resort to states and to taxes. If you want to keep it in the hands of the people, we already learned that might not always be the only solution. Okay, so 4 examples, but I'm taking a very big risk, especially with the first little chapter of my presentation. It's history, and given the fact that all you are academics, you might know a lot more about it. So it's just the big line I see in it, the big line we see in it and we use. You know. An example from a trade union initiative in the Dominican Republic. It will prove that even classic trade unions don't only unite workers in the formal economy, they also work for informal workers. GK, Gonashastaya Kendra in Bangladesh, health movement, health organization, and then mutual health schemes support in Africa. And for all these partners, let me say that we are like honored that they allow us to be their partners instead of the other way around. I brought some brochures as well on the GK example and on the example of the Dominican Republic, just for information. They're free, just take them and then read them whenever you have time. So, a little bit of history. Mutual assistance among workers, that's how it started back in Europe. Actually very early. Back in the early 1800s already, private mutual assistance funds. Mostly organized around crafts and trades, mostly also crafts protecting their craft and their work against others, unskilled workers. Mostly masters and workers together, some even built on based on the traditional guilds from the ancient regime. Inspired by, if I have read correctly in the academic historical articles I found, workers in factories in the same period already started uniting, started trying to establish these mutual assistance funds as well. But in dangerous industries like textiles, which were prone to competition, they had a much harder time to get the permit to establish their mutual assistance fund. For example, in textiles in Ghent, it was forbidden until way in the 1830s. In other trades, in other businesses, in other sectors, it was allowed because, and there was a rightfully so, which was the upper class city councils believed that this would facilitate social progress, that this would, and they were actually also used for supporting workers on strike sometimes. So, let's say the first basis of labor movement, mutual assistance fund. Legal frameworks were added in 1850, first trade unions established in the 1860s. And then I skip a very long period more or less the same example of Roberto mentioned the same period, making social protection compulsory. Now, what do I take as for the title of this session, the transformative capacity, and what it led to today is a strong and continuous involvement of trade unions and these health mutuals in the social health in the social protection system. In monitoring execution, it allows them to provide a lot of services to members, which really helps to have a very high degree of unionization. Yeah. So in this sense, being involved in the establishment, in the execution and the implementation of social protection systems has strongly increased the power of the labor movement as a transformative capacity to influence politics. Nowadays, what we see is continuous attacks on this role trade unions and health mutuals play. They want to kick them out. They resort to the state. The right-wing nationalists in Belgium, the neoliberals, they say we should kick out the trade unions of this service provision. Of course, it's to weaken them, and the state should do it. So they resort to, well, one very neoliberal approach to services, but they want to give it to the state. But it is to weaken civil society, it is to weaken social movements' role and their capacity to unionize, their capacity to influence and safeguard the rights of the people. Okay, second question, example. There are, let me say, similar other organizations like GK in Bangladesh as well, on different issues. But it's a partner organization with whom we have been partnering for a long time. They were established in '72, providing medical care during the Civil War. And then they continued, and we have grown immensely to a very big health organization, having thousands of community health workers going around to actually insufficient public health at best. So most healthcare is concentrated in urban and very urban areas. Very little access to health in the rural areas. So that's their field, their domain. They're in the rural areas. These community health workers go around the countryside on a bike. In the course of the time, they have established several health centers, specialized care hospitals as well. So they produce medicines. And on top of that, they created a system of medical insurance with different levels of contributions depending on one's income. This way, they've reached over 1 million people as members. What I mean to say there, of course, they strongly regret the fact that there is no universal healthcare system in Bangladesh, or what there is as public health is insufficient and is not functioning well. And they have a lobby and an advocacy to convince their governments to step up their game on health. But their philosophy is that, well, let's not wait for the government. Let's start this. Let's take this into our own hands and start establishing this alternative, which is not for free. It's everybody has to pay for treatment, but also again depending on their income. Everybody has to pay if one wants to be insured, medically insured. And then that's the philosophy behind it is to stimulate actually doctors to take patients seriously. If it's just for free, you could argue about that if this is true or not. I don't want to go into there. It's part of their philosophy. But it's quite an impressive success, built from below, built by doctors, built by health workers in Bangladesh. So I see it if we want to go.
This medicine production, what, generic medicine?
Yeah, mostly generic. It's quite big.
So they must be really rich.
It's a big organization. Their turnover is bigger than ours. So if we talk like Belgian NGO partner in the south, they don't really need us. So that's why I say, yeah, we're happy they allow us to be on board. Okay. Another initiative, UNSOL, The Dominican Republic, this is a street vendor, a beach vendor, touristic country, 5 minutes, okay. Also is the Mutual Association of Solidarity Services. In Western Europe, we would call what they do actually a kind of a social secretariat. I don't know if this exists in the other countries. But it's a mutual association that they established in 2005 to allow people in the informal economy, street vendors, taxi drivers, hairdressers, to get access to social protection, because in the law on the social security system in the Dominican Republic it's not included, so they're not included. So what they act as a virtual employer. It's like, let's say it's an innovative or a creative bypass to make sure that people in the informal economy can be covered by the national social security system. There are flaws in this national system. For example, there were supposed to be 3 groups: the indigent, who gets their access and their coverage for free, and then there's the contributory system, where people can afford it. And there's supposed to be a 3rd group, a subsidized contributory system, for people in the category in between. But even after all these years, the Dominican government hasn't even started implementing that. So that's a gap. So this AMUSOL initiative does not serve the poorest of the informal economy. It serves workers in the informal economy who have an income and who can contribute. But at least it's a way to increase the claim, to increase the voice of workers of the trade union, to also include the informal economy in the system. It strengthens them, it increases their credibility towards the government. So yeah, a second initiative which is still growing, which shows that if you are creative and if local social movements really go and try to, in this case it's a classic trade union, go to the informal economy workers and try to include them, offering services in this case again. It helps, you know. It makes a difference for many thousands of people. Even though they admit that, of course, that there's big legislative work and a big challenge to improve the system in the Dominican Republic. Lastly, health mutuals mostly in Western Africa, mostly in rural areas, almost exclusively in the informal economy, contribution-based health. In German they call it Krankenkassen, I think, in Belgium Ziekenfonds. So health mutuals, solidarity-based health mutuals, based on feasibility studies. Can people afford to contribute to a health insurance or not? How many of the people can? Even in a country like Burundi, studies show that 50% of the people can contribute. So and the Burundian government is not known for to have a lot of political will to start implementing social protection mechanisms. So instead of waiting again, they started, and you might actually compare it to the very first mutual assistance schemes and funds that were established a long time ago in Western Europe. They don't stick to this community-based small medical insurance schemes. They have 4 platforms to lobby. And in several countries like Mali, like Senegal, they've, by networking also with the trade unions, networking with social economy, with cooperatives, and going and approaching the governments together, they have achieved relatively strong, let's keep it like that, let's say like that, government involvement, yeah, and regulation of the initiatives. Co-financing, in Mali the government tops up the contribution of the people at 50%, so it allows for better coverage, better services to be covered. And there are in many of the countries in the laws and in the regulation, the idea is to subsidize the indigent, to make sure that they also have access, they can be covered, they can be included in the system for free. This is of course in many countries the lacking point, because it's the most challenging, the biggest challenge to do that. But working this way, they are around the table, they are involved, they have a say, they are in the monitoring systems, and it's growing. It's not big enough yet, and some academics have used to criticize it because it moves very slowly. But then again, in countries where it's top down, you don't see it moving fast either. Or like in Rwanda, they claim to cover 90% of the population. In reality, you say it's more closer to 40 or 50% of the population. And as a final thing, they managed by networking and by bringing these different national platforms together to influence the Western African Union, who also starts playing an active role in the promotion of those protection in recent years. I think that's it. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Koen, for the very interesting presentation.